So hello everybody. As you have noticed, we have been asked to make up a little bit of time, so I'll try to focus on the key and essential points. My name is Karina Martinez. I'm from Euroscript International, more concretely from the Berlin-based German subsidiary. And adding myself to the panoply in the worldwide Euroscript distribution, you can see we're a global language service provider present in almost all countries. But how does this go together with a locally financed project like Terrashoe? So the simple reason is that there happens to be a nice but really small group in Euroscript Berlin called Multilingual Content Technologies and Services, which I have the pleasure to lead. And this was the project group that cooperated with Acrolinks, the FK, and others in the development of Terrashoe. So, what's the interest of a language service provider to dive into MT anyway? When I talk to friends and relatives, I have the impression, as many of you may have, that machine translation is still viewed as something really funny and something you can play on at using Google and laugh a lot. But when I hear such arguments, I always suggest that people pick out a language they actually don't understand. I've chosen Estonian, which I have not the faintest clue of. So take a text, whatever text in Estonian, and look at it, and what will you gain in terms of information? Well, for me, it's zero. I can see Lehman Brothers and Europa. That's a bit everything. Now run it through Google without any more convenience, and for myself, I got a huge information increase of, I don't know, 1,000% or whatever. That is a strong argument for machine translation, because it opens up the access to information that otherwise I wouldn't have, or I wouldn't be able to get that quickly and on my own. Arguing with professional translators, the story becomes totally different, because those guys tell me, the professional Estonian to English translators, I don't care about this advantage. That doesn't help me anything, because what this system does, I can do myself. So give me something I can use and which will help me, or explain to me why I should give you any rebates, let alone work with that as a standard. And that, of course, being myself a professional translator, is something that gave me food for thoughts, and where I think has been the main gap between machine translation development over the past decades and professional language services. Because all development, or most of development, has very much focused on bridging that kind of information gap, which the translators precisely don't have. So what is it that a translator would need for machine translation to benefit in his daily work? Many of you are from the translation industry, so I just quickly recap the way that machine translation and other assets are usually incorporated into a translation workflow. We have a source text that is usually run through what we call a translation memory system, so basically a matching algorithm that will look for similar human translated segments in a database. What is left over, meaning not found in such database or found in a very qualitatively doubtful way, is then run through machine translation engines and added to the translation assets that the translator, in this case the post editor, gets and works with. So it's another type of assets that needs to be fed into the translation workflow in order to produce in the end the target text. For the translator, one of his main requirements for using MT is, of course, that it must help him and not disturb him. So he needs to find MT in the environment he's used to, and that has been designed for translators' purposes. In this example, classical Trados Studio environment, bilingual display of source and target, and which you probably can't read in this screenshot is that the fact that some segments come from machine translation is clearly declared. So as much as we have fuzzy matches, full matches, repetitions, you could also have a type of matches that is machine translation. All of that is pretty much standard today. So recapitulating quite quickly what a professional translator would expect from machine translation. Apart from the full integration, there needs to be a very easy plugin. So machine translation must not take more of his time to produce than he can afford. And Alyosha already mentioned that it must be easy to post-edit, which interestingly enough is not always the same than easy to understand. Alyosha had some examples. I could have added many more we found. The time doesn't allow it. But basically, what makes a sentence easy to understand for somebody that doesn't speak the source language is really not always what the translator would like to see. So we needed a way to separate the sentences easy to post-edit and to provide rather them to the translator. Another important point for professionals is terminology. It's not better to just translate anyhow, simply to find a way to transmit a word into another language. It is important to find the right word, or the translator will spend his time correcting words that a certain customer requires to appear. And which a big challenge that so far has not been solved, except for, to my knowledge, inside that project, is that we would like an upfront scoring of MT quality, not the usual self-scores that the systems declare about themselves, but a real valid score that would tell a translator, how would I have ranked this? And finally, a minimum quality threshold attached to this score that would allow us to discard 2 bad MT matches right up front. Speaking about translators' acceptance of MT, this is a very important factor, because how can I tell somebody to reduce his rates for something that in 50% of the cases is rubbish? I prefer not to give him 50% and to give him just the real good matches. Yeah. Baseline, Taraxu aims at combining all linguistic resources that we find in the translation process and aims at kind of converging or merging the translation memory concept with statistical and rule-based MT, making all of that just a resource for the translator and putting ranks on all of that. So give me the best translation suggestion and no matter where from. The system architecture, very roughly, is indeed that all of those processes are integrated in one system architecture. I think the next slide is even less meaningful. But the baseline is that our system will accept translation jobs from a web interface, will send it to all translation engines, including a translation memory system at the same time. A rule mechanism will be applied that will select the best sentence for each case. A mechanism will be applied that will extract unknown terminology. And afterwards, a document will be composed of the best of all world matches that will then get back to the translator. And indeed, there's a tuning, so a little radio button on the system where you could say, give me the best understandable sentences or give me the sentences easy to post-edit, which would be 2 different cases of application, gisting and professional translator input. Terminology processes, I don't know if I should hurry up, yeah? So, yeah, coming last to the productive gains that we have seen or are expecting once we put that into production is indeed that a good machine translation can very well outperform a high fuzzy match in terms of helpfulness for the translator. And for no matches, in any case, they definitely reduce the time required for translation, always given that they're best for post-editing. In many cases, so customers, domains, documents, a combination of several MT engines is indeed better than each engine on its own. And we have pretty good results in predicting the MT quality, which allows us to negotiate fair rates with translators because we kind of can foresee how they would rank the results, and definitely allows us to exclude garbage to a very high degree. Good. And coming back to where we are today, I hand over to Ben. Okay.